Now, please allow me to read briefly the brief background of Professor Datin Rashida Shoaib. Currently, she is in charge of the Director of Women's Development Research Center, or you may call it in Bahasa Malaysia, KANITA. Her educational background, she got, just briefly, she got her bachelor's from the University of Science Malaysia, Penang, and master's at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, Honolulu, and also she got doctoral degree from Michigan State University. And her specialization is about gender, about health, about women's health, and about medical sociology. Now, the times of waiting for the keynote speakers from USM has arrived. At this moment, I would like to call upon Professor Datin Rashida Shoaib on the stage.
Assalamualaikum and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'll try my Thai. I just learned half a minute ago. Swadika. Correct? Well, I'll try. I have another one. Dicha Chua Rashida Shoaib. Okay. I thank you very much to the organizing committee for asking me to present. To be a keynote speaker today is my honor, and with all humility I accept it. And the topic that I'm going to present is about engendering research, a topic which shouldn't be surprising to people who have known me for quite some time in USM, because I'm passionate about issues of social justice and issues of gender equality. My subtitle is, of course, The Road to Advancing Social Transformation. Already will give you the basis of my talk and the assumption that I'm making, that unless you engender research, and unless gender is taken seriously as critical to the teaching and learning and research in the university, social transformation will remain an illusion. I'll begin with a snapshot of some scenes that have taken place in the world of gender and research. This is not, of course, comprehensive and exhaustive. It's just, like I said, a very brief, superficial snapshot. If you look at agriculture, engendering agricultural research was a big topic. In fact, the main theme at the Global Conference on Agriculture and Rural Development, taking place this year in March 2010. You can see this road that leads here. This is my house in the village. In economics and trade, 2009, there was an expert meeting on mainstreaming gender in trade policy. And the resolution that was made was that there's a need to pursue research on gender dimensions of trade agreements because of the very serious implications that trade agreements have on women, particularly on women in developing countries who are involved in anti-trading and small trading, small businesses, for example, like in Thailand. At the UN level, at its 52nd session in March 2008, just 2 years ago, the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women urged national governments and the UN systems, other national and international agencies, and the private sectors to identify and address the differential impact of trade policies on women and men. In health, I have more examples than that, because that's my work. I'm in gender and health, particularly in sexual and reproductive health and rights. And I sat for 6 years as the Gender Advisory Panel of WHO in Geneva. So my examples tend to be more biased towards that. At the World Health Assembly, Article 60.25, they passed a resolution of integrating gender analysis. So what is gender analysis? And actions in the work of WHO, which means WHO, the regional officers, and by right it should influence the various state members of WHO, your country and mine. just a few days ago, September 2011, 29/30th, there was a big Global Health 2011, where a recommendation was made that cost-effective and evidence-informed policy making to improve health outcomes, using also the gender framework. WHO conducted a multi-country study on women's health and violence against women, and USM, thanks to the social transformation, the dean here, before then he wasn't yet the dean, who agreed. Maybe when he was the dean, he probably would have approved. Anyway, it was approved. USM conducted the first ever prevalence study on women's health and violence against women using the WHO validated questionnaire, which means now that we have comparable data with other countries on violence against women using the same questionnaire. And in South Africa Medical Research Council, it has the Gender and Health Research Unit. And in 2006, WHO meeting agreed about the need to integrate gender into the curricula for health professionals. So what are the common elements that we can pick up from those slides that I presented? One, that research has been done using the gender framework in many areas, in economics, in agriculture, in trade, in fishery, in health, in education, in tourism, etc., etc. It covers various fields, and there are numerous research topics. And in all of this, gender was used as a paradigm for research. And you know, if you read Thomas Kuhn, the scientific paradigm, you know how paradigm shapes our thinking, shapes our assumptions, shapes how we look at our research topics, at our society. It talks about the need for evidence for policy making based on research. And therefore it is very important that the kind of evidence that we provide that will shape the policy, and hence what follows in the development of a country must be based on certain type of research. And I would like to say that unless you do this gender framework, you are not going to get a complete picture of evidence for policy making. You need to set up institutional infrastructure. And as you can see, because this becomes a mechanism to facilitate gender research. And as you can see, the South African Medical Research Council has set up its own gender and health research unit that specifically targets at facilitating and integrating research, gender into part of research in South Africa. But it also has several implications, very serious implications. And one of them is that it asks us to challenge our current ways of doing research. It asks us to challenge our thinking about the research problem that we are trying to do research on. It asks us to use a different paradigm, different lens. Put on a 3D, you get a 3D image. You put on a 4D, you get 4D images. You don't have any Ds, then you get the flat screen. It also questions our assumptions, and this is linked to the ontology and the epistemology of knowledge production. And this is a quotation from my former VC, who left us just a few days ago. We cannot afford to do business usually. You have to do business unusual. Let me elaborate a bit more in terms of two basic things that I think is very important. To do gender research, there are two perspectives or philosophical assumptions that we really need to hang on to. And one is social constructivism, where ontological assumption is about reality. How do we look at the world? How do we understand the world? That's ontology. And it says that there are multiple realities. It's not just one reality. Multiple realities for women in the same household could be very different from the multiple reality that the man experiences. Because the context is very different. Because the position of women in each society is very different. Because the condition of the women in every society is also very, very different. Therefore, there are multiple realities. It's not just one reality. And most of these realities are socially constructed by individuals who live in a society, which means the society constructs our reality. how we dress, what we eat, how we behave, with whom we can talk or not talk, what access to resources we can have or not have. Epistemology, of course, touches on how we produce knowledge, the nature of knowledge that we produce. And in social constructivism, it says that you can only gain understanding through the meaning of the process, the experiences. So we have to understand the experiences that people come in with. And if we, for example, ignore and say, oh, group A's experience is not as important as group B, then you are denying that that particular experience is also part of the social reality. So how do we produce knowledge? Who gives us that knowledge? Research is about production of knowledge, after all. So who says what becomes very, very important. And what they say becomes very, very important, because it becomes part and parcel of that knowledge production. Then it talks about axiological assumptions, that is our own values as a researcher, our own subjective values. If you think that group A, or of not so important a value to the economy of the country, that talks about what value you place on that particular group. And that is going to shape the kind of questions that you're going to ask if you're going to collect research, particularly in the social sciences and humanities. If you think, for example, violence against women is not of importance to the development of a country, you're not going to allocate money for that kind of research. It talks about researchers' intuition, and of course, our biases as well. And researchers are known to try not to be biased, but truthfully, none of us can really not do that, because you bring your values already into the conceptualization of the research. And it asks us to look at all methodological assumptions, our research strategies, the importance of qualitative research, which social sciences tend to say, oh, not very important. How can you defend this qualitative research? It talks about phenomenology, it talks about ethnography, case studies, grounded theories, which cannot produce you percentage, but funders want percentage, to be sure, because they want quantitative. The other one that is also important for engineering research is the critical theory or the transformative theory. This is a bit more post-modernist, more feminist influence kind of thinking. And it still talk about multiple realities, but it also accepts that your multiple realities is not only the experience based on individual differences, but also because it is impinged by economics, macroeconomics of the country, microeconomics of the country, the political ideology, the political system that we carry on, and also the culture in that society. It shapes and influences these realities. And epistemology-wise, it says, and this is very strong, very important, because ideologically it is a critique of power, because it believes that in our society we are stratified, and we are stratified basically by power relations. And it talks about who gets what, the privilege, and who are being oppressed and the oppression. So it again questions this knowledge thing that we are producing. And of course, the axiological assumption, the role of values, is that researchers need to acknowledge their values and their biases. And methodologically, it says you must use all sorts of methods, both the qualitative and the quantitative. So these two philosophical assumptions are important when we talk about engendering research. And I think the other common element for me coming from my university is the language that I've always spoken to my Vice Chancellor, is that if your apex agenda of the university is to transform higher education, how can you ever talk about transformation if this gender perspective is not being taken seriously? How can you talk about the bottom billion if you do not understand half of that bottom billion, or the bottom billion basically, actually, the bottom of the bottom billion actually tends to be women, children, and the elderly. And definitely, I agree with him, I concur with him, that we need to do our research, not as business as usual, but business as usual, with more innovative thinking about new paradigm. Let me touch a bit on the university research and social transformation in a brief, just on one slide. I think you will agree with me that research is integral to the role of universities. It's in fact very critical to the survival of the universities. Why? Because universities are indeed sites of knowledge production. We are expected to produce knowledge. What kind of knowledge we want to produce is a big question. And I think my VC has always questioned, are we just churning the same theory over and over again, mimicking what has been done in the past? Universities are also catalysts for change. How can you be catalysts of change if you are not questioning your own research assumptions in the first place? Research is also to find the truth. This is what we teach our students. You're supposed to find the truth. But what truth are we talking about here? Whose truth? And that's why the epistemology becomes very, very crucial. Whose truth is this that you're trying to present? Basically, maybe the researcher's truth. And social transformation is not just about physical transformation. At night, having 14 or 15 floors. I mean, when I came here 20 years ago, we didn't have some of these big hotels or the big plaza. Now we have. That's not just social. That's the social transformation. It is transformation about our thinking and the way we think about issues. It is about challenging hierarchical and patriarchal biases. Society is a society that has strong patriarchy working in it. That is the values of men, shaped by men's values. It is challenging existing research system. Our research system is big. It includes the politics of funding, what funding goes to what. And it includes also the politics of assessment, the indicators that the funders want to use, which may not sync with indicators that the researchers want to use and want to project. But at the end of the day, social transformation is about social justice. And this is my center's ideological framework, that whatever you do, it must lead the society, it must transform the society toward social justice for all groups. Let me give you now the word engender comes from the word gender. Of course, you open the dictionary, you find engendering, political, whatever, through research. That may not mean the same way the way I mean it. So I need to now clarify with you the terms. In the engendering world, there is a big difference between sex. Your sex is male or female. Latif and Badaruddin, sex, male. Because they are biologically determined characteristics. They have the Y chromosomes and they don't have distinct male and female patterns. Therefore, in terms of health, we're going to find specific morbidity, specific mortality. Because of your sexual organs which are different, your chromosomes which are different, your whatever else that is different, your hormones and so forth. So you're going to have specific sex-related health problems in health, for example. You have, oh, they're afraid of engendering. It's a very radical word. Even the technology is getting frightened there. So you will have, for example, men suffering from prostate cancer because they have prostates, and women suffering, for example, from cervical cancer because we have cervix, things like that. So it's very specific. So doing women's health is not necessarily using a gender framework. We are just doing women's health, which is very sex-specific. Gender, however, refers to men and women. It refers to me, Rashida Shoaib, or refers to you, or refers to any one of you, men or women. But men and women has been constructed by the society. Me, Rashida Shoaib in Malaysia is very different from Rashida Shoaib living in Patani, because the context in Patani is very different from Malaysia. It refers to how the economy, the social and the cultural attributes and opportunities associated with being male or female in a particular social setting at a particular point in time. Therefore, you and I actually are a product of the society. You are socially constructed by society. And that's why the way I dress now was different from the way I dressed in the 1970s. We play different roles, different responsibilities in the society, and some of these roles are assumed or linked naturally to your sex. Because I get pregnant and therefore I produce babies, naturally I must be the one taking care of my children. Naturally, I must be the one who makes milk. Naturally, I must be the one cooking at home. It is assumed, even though these roles have nothing to do with your biology. Any man can cook. Any man can make milk. You can't breastfeed, yes. But you can make milk. You can even take milk from the breast and feed the baby using spoon or whatever. So you can. These are socially constructed. And we have different norms and values. Where we can sit, where we cannot sit. Where women sit at the back, or sit in the front, or sit at the side. Or women be in the front. women become leaders or not become leaders. These are all different roles and responsibilities assigned by the society, nothing to do with my biological makeup at all. And because of that, it makes us different. It puts us in a different position in the society, and therefore our access to resources. Resources taken in a very broad sense. Resources can mean knowledge. Resources can mean access to healthcare tomorrow. Resources can mean having a motorbike and not having a motorbike. Or whether you can ride a motorbike, or whether you be lashed 10 times for driving a car. That's resources. Of course, if you go to Kelantan, women drive Harley Davidson with their scarf, flying on top of their head. But that's quite different in Kelantan, huh? And control of resources. Some women work and they have money, but have no control in terms of using the money. So who controls the resources in the society? The political resource is also very important, whether women knows how to make use of the political resource as a leverage to negotiate, for example, in the society. So gender still talks about you and I, men and women. It talks about actually you as a biology, from the biological perspective, with your specific problem, as well as you from the gender perspective, as defined, as constructed by the society. So you are actually part of that biology and part of the social makeup, whether you're a man or whether you are the women. And this is because in any society, even in the United States, society is divided by various fault lines. Fault lines, we are divided into class, levels of education. And one of the fault lines that have never or rarely been considered in many research work is the gender fault line. Sex fault line has been considered because it's very specific to the sex, particularly in health. But the gender fault line, the roles and responsibilities, the norms and the values, that rarely have been taken on board when we talk about research or when we talk about policy. So why do we need to end gender research? Because gender is an important social stratifier. That's how we're stratified. If we talk about making a house, for example, for those in housing, building and planning, we have to ask ourselves, what is the impact of this housing project that I'm going to have on the men and the women in that society? If we